They looked like the perfect family. A handsome couple, 2 kids, a beautiful home in Forest Hills. Janet March was an artist. Perry March was a lawyer. But when Janet vanished in 1996, the cracks in the perfect life turned into a crater. No body, no crime scene, just a missing mother and a husband with an airtight story. What followed was a decade-long saga of lies, cover-up, international manhunt, and one of the rarest outcomes in American justice, a murder conviction without a body. This is the story of Janet Gail Levine March and the lie that almost got away with murder. Welcome to Off the Record on the Air. I'm Sheila Wysocki, and today we're revisiting one of Nashville's most gripping and unsettling cold cases, the disappearance and murder of Janet March. This case isn't just about a missing wife. It's about power, perception, and a chilling illusion of control. With me are my co-hosts and collaborators, Dennis Ferrier, Lori Morrison, and Jeff Lucas. Dennis, you reported on this case. What do you remember?
All right, it was a big story immediately. I think maybe first of all, it was in a part of town where there aren't murders or disappearances. And when someone disappears like that, you're not sure what happened, but it was her family immediately said she did not disappear. She loved her children. She was a devoted mother. It made no sense that she ran off. And her car was missing, and then it was found almost immediately a few miles away, and it was on. It was this incredible, mysterious disappearance. And, everybody suspected Perry March immediately. This wasn't like, oh, what happened? It was like everyone suspected Perry March. So it just got huge attention from the get-go. Very wealthy people. Janet March's father, an incredibly successful lawyer, Larry Levine. I mean, this was a family, well-known, affluent family, prominent Jewish families in the Nashville area, and just immediately had this quality of what in the world happened here?
Well, and the husband should be the first suspect because what is it, 80% or more of women who are murdered, it's someone they know. And so, of course, you're going to start there. He should not have been surprised to have been the prime suspect. From what I remember of the case just in the media at that time, seemed like he protested just a little too much. Dennis, did you get that feeling?
Oh, yeah, right. Oh, she stormed off after an argument, and, pretty soon it was pretty clear that the house, there was a rug missing, a big rug and nothing else.
Didn't he say she ran off with somebody?
Ran off, decided to go on vacation after a fight. Oh. That's what he said. It was a vacation.
And left her kids, left everything.
Yeah, left everything, even her purse. It was a vacation apparently with somebody else. Didn't need money. I don't know any vacations like that.
Now, didn't he have also a big pond on their property? Or his dad's property or something? Because I thought, it seems to me I remember the rumor mill being at the time that she was, and I hate to say it this way, but wood chippered. Putting a wood chipper in.
I remember that.
That's why she hasn't been found.
Oh, yeah. People were just, the pig farm. Yeah. And,
Wasn't there a golf course or something being built? Maybe.
But, immediately the grandparents, it was antagonistic. There was no poor Perry. There was head-to-head fight and a fight over the children and custody of the children. So there was that element that came with this story immediately.
How many women leave their children?
Yeah,
with no luggage, no anything. So the parents of Janet, did they get custody?
They did not. So there was going to be all these different hearings, and they were fighting. And in the middle of it all, Perry grabbed the kids and went to Mexico.
Okay.
And that's it. And so that was a sensational element.
And then,
so he disappeared before any final decision was made on the kids.
And then he got married in Mexico, right?
Carmen, yeah.
Yeah, I got remarried.
Carmen, yep. He married a young Mexican woman named Carmen, and he had a little villa there in Lake Chapala, there in Ajijic.
She didn't know what she was in for.
Well, and what's interesting about his work down there, he was an attorney.
and he was actually scamming people down in Mexico.
So he got away with it. I mean, he really did get away with it because he's in Mexico and they won't extradite you for capital crimes, and he has this beautiful wife, and he has this beautiful villa, and he has this little business. But Perry March couldn't stop with the evil, and so he set up this law firm, and he worked as a lawyer, and his client would be all the retirees that were coming to live in Lake Chapala or Ajijic. He would help them with go through the Mexican red tape. But in Mexico, when you hire an attorney, you give them power of attorney. So you would walk in and you would sign up, and then he would have access to your bank account. He would empty your bank account. And then when you had nothing in your bank account, they would come back. So Larry Levine, who was so smart, contacted me and said, what if we get him extradited for cheating these people? Because the Mexican government doesn't want their retirees messed with. And I said, that's a great idea. And so we worked together, identifying people who had been ripped off, and then went down there to interview them and spend time in Ajijic and build that case against them, which was nothing to do with the murder.
Now, when you were down there, were you nervous about?
Very nervous,
Yeah.
very nervous. We went under false names. We were in Guadalajara. He had threatened to kill us. We had heard, and it was a very strange situation because some of the reporters, like if you could go drink margaritas with them if you didn't ask him tough questions, but we were building a case against him, hopefully to get him extradited. So it was a very hostile situation. Of course, at one point we did have to confront him, and he had two young guys out front of his law office with machine guns, and we're like, what is going to happen? So anyway, we walk over there, and he comes over, and my photographer was a Mexican-American who spoke fluent Spanish, so he looked Mexican. He was a former rodeo cowboy, and Mario Martinez, and it had a big 4. We were at Channel 4 and had a big 4 on the side, and Perry comes out of his office and he says, get rid of them. I don't care what you do to them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's this moment, like we knew we had to confront him. I don't know what was going to happen, but we're going to leave. We're not busting. I mean, we were kind of like trying to, and I swear the providence of God, there's only one television station in Guadalajara, and it's Canal de Cuatro. It's Channel 4.
Yeah.
And a young guy looks at the 4, and he says to the other guy, Canal de Cuatro. He says, Channel 4. And they both run because they didn't want to be on the local news. Now, if they knew we were in Nashville, they probably would have beat us with the butt of the gun,
wow.
But they ran. And Perry was beside himself. He was, that's how he talked. And he hit the camera and broke the viewfinder off the camera. And you know what? We left because that's where we were there. We got it.
Oh, wow.
We got our little confrontation. And we left and we went back and put the stories together, and he was extradited. And he was extradited on a very flimsy murder case, right?
No
He was
body.
Right, no body. But he was extradited. No body, no confession. And then, as you know, when he got back, when he got on that airplane with Pat Postiglione and Greg Rodriguez from the FBI in that little international area of the Guadalajara airport, things started to unravel for him at that point. So it was really
perfect person to join and talk about Perry March is legendary Nashville murder squad detective Pat Postiglione, legend in Nashville. And we're so lucky to have him. And, he took a very long plane ride when Perry March was finally arrested in Guadalajara, and he brought him back, and they became, they had some great conversations that Pat shared on the witness stand. But now that it's long over, just wondering, what was it like for you, Pat, when you finally arrested a man who I guess you suspected from day one?
Yeah, I mean, he was a strong suspect, but Tom Thurman was heavily involved in the case as a prosecutor, and he didn't feel like there was enough. But then finally, when we got to the point where he felt like there was enough to indict him, that's what he did. And then with the FBI assistance, they took him out of Mexico. They brought him to L.A., and Bill Pridemore and I went to L.A., and we picked him up. And we rode with him. It was a 5-hour trip. We actually went from L.A. to Memphis, and then from Memphis to Nashville. And during that time, he began to speak. He began to, we were eating, and he began to speak to me, asking me about, what if this, what if that. This is after I had told him, look, you're an attorney. You don't have to speak to us if you don't want to. You know your rights. Because you're an attorney, you don't have to speak to us. But if you speak, I will certainly listen. And he did. He spoke, and I certainly listened. And he spoke about, what if this happened? What if that happened? What if Tom Thurman could promise me X number of years in prison because my wife won't wait for me if it's over 5 years? And he's speaking about his wife down in Mexico. He had remarried and I think had a child. And we had a long conversation, and I let him speak. The more he spoke, the more I listened, and I didn't have to ask him any questions. I would occasionally ask him a question based on what he said to me, but for the most part, he spoke, and I documented everything he said in my head. And then as soon as we got back, I, wrote everything down. And I recall walking with him. We were going after we brought him into the Criminal Justice Center, we were walking with him, Bill Pridemore and I said to him, are you sure everything you're saying to me is true and you actually want to meet with Tom Thurman on Monday? And he stopped and he pointed to his face. He said, look at this face. He said, do you think I'm kidding? I said, well, I hope you're not kidding. And we went on, and then the meeting actually didn't happen and did not happen. And then, things turned, and then his father eventually gave us the information, and, his father ended up actually, testifying against him via video. He wasn't there in person because of his health. But he testified against his son. He said he helped his son because he was his son. And Arthur we picked up, by the way, in Houston, and he was, I guess the term would be, he was a piece of work to say. He was that crazy Uncle John that everybody has, I guess. And, he took a liking to me, and he would talk to me about football and everything. And initially, he wouldn't talk at all about the case. He wouldn't, nothing to do with the case. But eventually, the feds, when he became involved in the federal charges, he understood. And then his attorney got involved, and then he ended up deciding to go ahead and flip, more or less. And he did. He flipped, and he told us where they went, picked up her body, and then they took her body up to, we believe, up toward Bowling Green. They were building a golf course at the time, and I believe, and Bill Pridemore believes, and Tom Thurman believes that's where he took the body. He told us that he tried to put her in a creek originally. This is Arthur talking. He tried to put her into a creek, and the water, he didn't feel like the water was deep enough. He had her in a bag. She was in a bag. The reason why he went and picked her up initially is because Perry called him, because the owner of the property called Perry and said that I sold the property and, we need to do whatever. And Perry knew that if the body was found on the property, if Janet was found on the property, it would immediately link back to him because he was representing this woman. He knew this woman. He was her attorney. So he got his dad involved, and his dad said that, well, he told me to clean up some areas in the house, clean it up for blood. And he said, I didn't see any blood, but I cleaned up where he told me to clean. That's what Arthur told us. And he did all that. He did everything Perry asked him to do. And then they went up to this area, and he found where Perry told him the body was. Perry stayed in the car, and he brought this body. He said, described it in a bag. He put her in the trunk of the car, and then they went up toward Bowling Green. And when they got to Bowling Green, he said Perry went into the hotel and went to sleep, amazingly. And he said that he took care of the body. He told Perry, I'll take care of it. And he did what he told us. He took her to a creek initially, and the creek wasn't deep enough. And then he saw this wood burning pile. And there was a bunch of trees, and he knew that eventually they would burn that. So he took her, and he put clothing here, and he put her there, and the bag there, in 3 different sections of this burn pile. And he's correct, because the burn pile's up there during that time at this golf course. War burned periodically, heavy kerosene, and it's intense fire. So he was correct about that. And the funny thing is, he said to us while he was there, he saw a school bus. And Bill Pridemore and I were up there. We were searching, and as we were standing there, here comes a school bus. I mean, almost exactly the way Arthur described it. So we strongly believe. Unfortunately, we couldn't find her body to bring to the family, but I think we gave them enough for them to believe it as well. That's where she is. And Perry, I mean, if he ever acknowledges it or admits it or confesses, I would be shocked. He might do that tomorrow, but I highly doubt it. And I say that because I believe, my opinion is, he's a sociopath and he doesn't have a conscience. And when you don't have a conscience, confessing is the last thing you want to do unless there's some kind of benefit out of it. But in terms of remorse, guilt, regrets, I doubt very seriously that he has any of them. But that's just my opinion.
What was your impression of Lawrence Levine? I've told people in the past, I said, if you wanted someone to, seek justice, that's the dad you wanted. He was just relentless, right?
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest with you, if that was my daughter, I don't know if I could have been as patient as he was, to be honest with you. I'd have to maybe go to plan B. Sorry. Lawrence Levine, he came, we met with them, and Mrs. Levine, we met with them, and we told them that the cold case unit, we were going to take over this case. And, because remember, initially he was with the missing persons, and David Miller was a detective on that, and he was running missing persons unit. So technically, yes, she's a missing person, but we believe something else occurred. And then as time went on, it made perfect sense for the cold case unit to take it over. And Tom Thurman was right in the middle of it, and he was all about that. And he was in 100% agreement. So Bill Pridemore and I, we worked on that case relentlessly for 2 or 3 years. And then we got to the point we were able to indict. But Lawrence Levine, a great man. His wife was great. They came to my retirement. They came to Bill Pridemore's retirement. Good people. And I don't know how they were able to hold up under that. To be honest with you, I don't think I could have. But you're exactly right. He was a good man. I had no doubt in him. When it come to, he believed in us. His wife believed in us. They really did. They believed in us, and they were so grateful. And I did get real close with them, and it was a pleasure to know them. And just under those circumstances, of course.
Wow. Just one of the 7 deadly sins being pride. Those of us who didn't know Perry but saw him, and he would constantly do these interviews, under certain circumstances. It seemed like arrogance, hubris, all of those things were part of his downfall.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. I think he actually said to me one time that on the plane, actually, he was talking about it, and he said something about being the smartest guy in the room, and that came as no surprise to me because, of course, you did. You're always the smartest guy in the room, he said, until today. So, and then, he actually he said to me, when we got back to the criminal justice center, he asked me he said he had to use the restroom. So I took him to the restroom, and he said to me, I never said to you I was the smartest guy in the room. And I can't believe he actually said that. Of course you said that to me. I mean, I didn't make it up. You said that to me. So he's you're right. He's kind of, it's kind of hard to pinpoint his personality. I don't know if, being a sociopath, in police work that I do, I come across a lot of sociopaths, and not everybody who's a sociopath becomes a killer. But most sociopaths, a lot of people don't realize that they're really incapable of a real live relationship. They're incapable of true love. They're good actors. They're good liars. And they live the lie every single day. And I think Perry was part of that. I really do. He has a relationship with his kids. I'm not really sure what the relationship is now. I know some years ago there was some issues maybe, but hopefully they've been able to move on. It's difficult for them, I'm sure, because they're pulled both directions. So it's tough. But yeah, Perry. I mean, yeah, he was always a character. I'm not really sure. A lot of people had negative opinions of him even before Janet's situation. They thought he was a bully, kind of an attorney, and a lot of people didn't like him. Plus, remember, he got in trouble at the other when he worked at the other place. He got in trouble, and he was putting his sexual content in these books, knowing that an intern was going to read it. And then he got caught. I think they set up a little video camera, and he got caught doing that. And then he had to resign from there. And then he ended up working for Lawrence, which was mind blowing. But that's I mean, he's a character. He really is, and he's where he needs to be.
Has he ever reached out to you after? Because I know he did some, didn't he reach out to you after he was convicted or some others?
Yeah, he reached out to Nick Barris at 5, who was always very friendly, and kind of let him tell his story unchallenged. He did not reach out to me. He reached out to people who were that there's a style of reporting where you're just tell me your story and I'll just go along with whatever you want.
I got you.
He never reached out to me because we were in high conflict.
Actually, I think Bruce Mendenhall, Nick Barris Bruce Mendon will reach out to Nick Barris as well. Same
Same
scenario.
scenario, yeah.
Yeah. He'd reach out to him. He would just tell whatever, and Nick would just take it all in.
Yeah, just put it on.
I
put it
mean,
on
wouldn't
TV.
challenge anything, I guess. I don't know, but
That's the unspoken rule in that.
yeah.
When you're dealing with someone.
But no, he's never. As far as I know, he's never reached out to me.
Be interesting to see if he ever did, just to say, you know what, you were right.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I don't think
he's
so.
The guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that'd be great. But I don't think he has it in him to do something like that. But you never know. I mean, I never say never, But I mean, I've amazingly, I've gotten mail from people on death row, mailed to my house.
Yeah.
So somehow they know where I live, which is not real comforting. But he sent me a letter and he was asking me for something, and I mean, so yeah, he could. If he wants to reach out, he certainly can do that.
I just when I worked, I always found it was interesting when you made an arrest and you finally just nailed them down, and they finally go, "You got me, dude."
Yeah, sometimes.
You got me.
Yeah.
And even though we already knew we had them, it was just that piece of wording. Like, you acknowledged it. We got you.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
I guess Perry will.
I think you're right, and some of them have done that with me, but the Perry Marches are not that type. I wouldn't think he would reach out. If he does, I'd be shocked. I'd be pleasantly surprised, but I guess you never know. But I wouldn't expect him to reach out.
Can you interview in prison?
No, so there were some problems with the prison budget about 9 years ago, and so they banned all interviews. You used to just have to request. You could go on death row, and we did dozens of really illuminating interviews, But, the thing is with the state of Tennessee, usually when they do something, they never undo it. So the guy did it because he had something to hide. But, years have passed, and it's like that's the new rule.
Right.
No interviews. And, no one's even thought hey, let's undo this,
Yeah.
It's a public service and hear from some people.
Is he on death row?
No.
Okay.
Perry, no, he's 53 years
Okay.
in jail, just getting fatter and
Well,
balder
and
all the time.
don't forget, he also got convicted of trying to kill the Levines.
That's right.
That is
'Cause no one talks about
Yeah,
that.
he got convicted of that, and how that came to be is amazingly, he went to somebody who was in jail, and he said to them, "If you can help me, if you can kill the Levines, my chances of acquittal go up." I think he said 80% or 90%,
Wow.
which was totally incorrect.
Yeah,
but
right.
that's what he said. And thankfully, this guy who we became buddies with eventually, he contacted his attorney, who ended up contacting Tom Thurman, who ended up contacting me, and we had a meeting with this guy. And we sitting across from us, and he was telling us something. But sitting there saying, "You've got to be kidding me." He said, "No." So I said, "Well, would you be willing to wear a little wire, maybe?" And he said, "Yeah, So we got with the sheriff's department, and they were very, very helpful, very obliging, and they helped us, and we wired this guy up, and we had 5 hours of conversation with him, where he was talking about maybe how to kill him, what type of gloves to wear, and then after you do it, you're going to get on a plane, and you're going to go to Mexico, and you're going to meet my dad, and he's going to take you down, and hot women, cold beer, and that's going to be your payoff for killing the Levines. Now, keep in mind, he said, don't do it when my kids are there. Which was really nice of him, I guess. But at the same time, he said his kids are going to be the ones that are going to come home and find the Levines because that's where they were living.
Okay.
So he was okay with that.
Yeah.
But
not actually.
No, yeah. He was
witnessing.
okay with them coming home, finding the Paul Levines murdered. So, and we set the whole scenario up as if it happened. We had Nate contact Arthur, and he told him it's done. And Arthur said, "Well, I haven't seen anything on the news." He said, "Well, I'm just telling you it's done. It's over. I'm getting ready to get on a plane." And in the meantime, we had airplane noise. We had fake airplanes. It sounded like he was in an airport. Mm-hmm. And Arthur believed him, and we had the FBI down there in Mexico, and the FBI had an eyeball on him, and they went to Arthur, and they got him, and he had some kind of a heart situation at that time, and I don't think it was a heart attack, but yeah, they got him, and then he got brought back, and he got brought back to Houston, and Bill Pridemore and I went down to Houston, and we picked him up, and we brought him up here. He got brought into the whole conspiracy thing, and but I mean it was so Perry got convicted on that as well, so he got.
That's right.
Yeah, so he
What
got a lot
about the
of
brother and sister that Perry called the night of the fight or murder?
You mean
Perry's
Perry's
brother.
brother?
Yeah. Didn't he have a sister?
Yeah, in Chicago.
Right.
Yeah, and he was staying there for a while. Yeah, and I mean, we interviewed them. We spoke with them. They met with us several times. We had no issues with them in terms of any sort of involvement, any sort of acknowledgement, or anything like that. We didn't feel like if they knew, we weren't able to figure that out.
Okay.
To say they knew, but they kept it. It didn't seem to us that they would be that type.
Okay.
Anything is possible, I guess. But no, it seemed like it was all Perry.
Mm-hmm. And the father.
And the father. And well, he recruited the dad.
Right.
And keep in mind too, when he took her car and put it at the apartment complex, a lot of people forget about that. We have a guy that called us and said, when I saw his picture in the paper, that's who I saw pushing the bike at the parking lot where the car was found. Her shoe was in the car. Her pocketbook was in the driver's side, pushed down in the driver's side door, which I found to be odd. If that was Janet, if that was my wife, she's certainly not going to put it down in the door. She'd put it on the passenger seat.
Mm-hmm.
And the passenger seat was tipped back like this. I said, well, why in the world would he put the stuff here or in the back seat and nothing on the passenger seat? And then we figured it out. We went to the bike place, and I interviewed a guy there, and he gave me the measurements of the car and measurements of the bike. And he says, as a matter of fact, I have a car just like that, and I put my bike on the front seat.
Wow.
And he testified.
Wow.
He testified, and that's what
Good
we
work.
suspect. That's what we suspect that Perry did. He bought the car there. He made it look like she had been kidnapped, and then he rode the bike home. I think it was a 5-mile trip, a 4-mile trip, something like that. And he took the bike and took it home, and that's he got nailed on that as well. So.
Wow.
If you don't mind me asking, how long did you work the case from it being reported to a conviction? How long? What was that time period?
Well, the conviction, 10 years. We're talking coming up on 10 years.
No, I mean
1990.
the investigation. Like, how long did it take you to really get him to court?
Probably 2 or 3 years. We worked on it solid for 2 or 3 years. But the funny thing is, we assisted David Miller and them way back when it first happened with a search warrant of the house. And they had that beautiful house there. And we did a search warrant on the house. Or they did. We assisted them. And I clearly remember Perry being on the back deck, smoking a cigar, just kind of, like he was almost halfway. Him and his brother. And I think the brother believed whatever Perry was telling him, So, but I do remember him smoking a cigar on the back, almost like he wasn't worried about a thing, So, but that was, way back initially. So I was involved in bits and pieces all the way to the very end, And then when he finally went to trial, I think it was in 06. It's coming up on 10 years.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a long time. These cases, they don't leave you,
No, it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah.
A very special thank you to Pat Postiglione for sitting down with us and sharing the behind-the-scenes moments on Off the Record on the Air.
The Levine family never gave up. They turned their pain into purpose, pushing for laws that give grandparents a voice, for custody clarity, for justice when one parent vanishes. And most of all, they made Janet's life matter. It wasn't just a murder. It was a wake-up call, a reminder that behind every headline is a legacy and a ripple effect that can change laws, lives, and how we treat the ones we love. Until next time, remember, nothing stays off the record. Thanks for tuning in to Off the Record on the Air. If you found today's episode eye-opening, do us a favor, subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps more truth seekers find their way to the conversation. Want more of the real stories? Support Dennis Ferrier's bold reporting on Fox 17's The Ferrier Files. Follow Lori Morrison on Facebook and Instagram @SheShepherd for safety tips and sharp commentary. Jeff Lucas and his creative hub, Studio JSL in Gallatin. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share Without Warning podcasts where the cold cases don't stay cold. Special thanks to our sponsors. JSL Studios, bringing stories to life with purpose and grit. Relax Wraps, your go-to for comfort and calm. Shop locally in Franklin at the Painted Tree Boothby 22. Until next time, stay curious,